What's up, all you fishing fools? So, I did a little quick tip yesterday on doing some of these um, swim baits. So, I figured I'd show you how I do just a quick kind of basic bluegill pattern. And so, basically, this was a clear blank, clear plastic. Instead of using like a opaque white base like I do a lot of times for the natural look, I'll leave it clear. I sprayed just a little bit of pearlized silver on there, and it's not really opaque, so you can still kind of see through it, and light kind of comes through it. And then after I do that, I just kind of mist it with a little bit of transparent Caribbean blue, and that's just to kind of give you your base. So the next thing I'll do for like a big bluegill is I'll add a little bit, and I'm just going to mist this on just a little fluorescent purple. I always want to make sure these Creatix paints are shaken up really well. The biggest challenge with using an airbrush, depending on what kind of paint you use, is knowing how to thin it. So generally, if I'm using Creatix paints or sometimes even the Wicked line, I'll reduce those paints down. And the reason why is just because it makes them easier to spray through your gun. If they're too thick, obviously they won't spray and your gun gets clogged up. And then I use just a little bit of 412 high performance reducer. I mean, some people use water, some people use all kinds of different stuff. I just kind of use that because I think it's easy. And generally, if I'm using Creatix paints like this fluorescent, I'll usually thin it by about half. So I count the drops, and probably just for this bait, since I'm only doing one bait, I'm gonna probably put like 2, 3, about 4 drops of paint is it. And that's all I'm gonna put in there because it atomizes and it's gonna spray out really thin. I always use these toothpicks as a stir, but I'll take my 412 reducer, and if I put 4 drops of paint, I'm gonna put 2 drops of reducer. And I'm just gonna take this toothpick and I'm gonna mix it in the bowl of my gun here, and I'll mix it up really good. And the more you mix this with this 412 reducer, it kind of breaks the pigment of the paint up and busts it up and makes it really thin. I tell people usually when I'm mixing paints that you kind of want the consistency of, say, of like a milk. Anything thicker than that and it really doesn't shoot good through these brushes. Now I usually wear a dust mask or a respirator when I'm painting because I paint so much, breathing this crap in. So I've got that mixed. Give it a little test spray. And then basically what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna mist this bait. So you can see I misted it, and that just gives it that little purple hue. And then, you know, you just have to realize that as you do this, you got other colors that are going to go on here and mix with that as well. So because that's kind of a dark color, I'll go ahead and I'll clean my gun out. And I just use a little bit of airbrush cleaner in this, put a few drops in it. Easy way to do that is put your finger over this after you get your cleaner in there, press your air and backwash it, make it bubble up. You can hear it bubbling. Probably you can see it a little bit there. And then to avoid the mess, you can get you one of these little things to spray into. I used to just spray in a garbage can, but this does really well. That's the compressor kicking on. So you spray that out, clean it, and you just take a rag and wipe that really good. Make sure I'm all clean. You can pretty much look at it. It'll be clean on the inside there. Get it on your hand, which I normally wear gloves too. I'll spray that on there. If you're painting any kind of lure, you know, whether it be perch pattern, crawfish pattern, shad pattern, whatever, there's one color that you really need, and it's called a detail sepia. And it's almost, to me, kind of like a dark, rich brown, crossed with maybe a little bit of black. And that's what I use a lot to get highlights and darker spots on these fish. So I'll shake this up really well, and I'll probably go with like 4 drops on this. And usually what I try to do is I'll line like 3 or 4 baits up at a time so I can do similar colors to kind of knock them out. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then again, this is a Createx, well, this is a Wicked steel made by Createx, and I'm gonna still reduce it by half. And like I said, keep in mind, some paints are different. If you use like the bloodlines like this one, it's by Createx, it's more of like a illustration paint, and it's really thin. So you don't have to reduce that. It's just a matter of playing with different paints and different brands to see what's going to spray in your particular gun and what's not going to spray. But then it helps, man, because if you don't, like, it's going to spit and sputter, and it's going to constantly get clogged up. So I always cover like the surface of my bench and like in this paper, like that you would cover areas of the floor, whatever. If you're going to paint, I buy it in a big roll, and every so often I change it out. The reason why I'm saying that is because to get the true color of paint, like if I'm mixing it or if I'm thinning it, after I get it mixed, I'll look at the toothpick and then I'll just kind of smear it out on that paper, and that kind of gives me an idea of what that paint's going to actually look like once I spray it. So this detail sepia will kind of be my detail for the highlights. And you know, typically when you look at any kind of fish, bait fish or whatever, they're usually darker on the top and lighter on the bottom. And that's so if a prey species or the prey that they're eating looks at them, if they're looking at them from the top down into the bottom away from the light, it kind of camouflages them and makes the fish look darker. If they're looking at the fish from the bottom, and you think about this, the sunlight shining down on them, it kind of helps camouflage them that way too. And so you'll see, as I'm starting to darken this in, and it's kind of blending in with the purple, which is what I'm trying to do. Since I'm doing light coats, what I do in between a lot of the light coats, especially if I'm trying to build them up or whatever, is I'll do what they call heat set them. Some people use a heat gun, but all I did was, man, I just went to like one of the, the Restores or whatever, like the Goodwills, and I got like this hair dryer. Look, it was $4. That's what I paid for it, and that's really all you need. Put it on high heat, and this just heat sets it. And basically, when you say heat set, you're just drying in between coats. And a lot of times you really have to dry it just to see how it's going to really stand up on your bait there. So I'll add a little bit more to a couple of spots, kind of on the edges of some of these fins. Run out of paint there. Just add another little drop, and then if I run a little short, a lot of times I can get away with just adding a drop to what's already in there without thinning it. So that's what I'm going to do. Maybe one more little speck here. Just to catch this top a little bit better. All right, so there you see I got it kind of the top and the back, and then you catch kind of the edges of the top and the bottom fins. You know, if you hadn't really done many perch or whatever, I would recommend getting you a picture just off the internet or something that, you know, you can have a reference photo with the colors, because they do mix and match, and, you know, depending on what part of the country you're in or whatever, there may be a little bit different. I have some that after I do the kind of blue and the purple on there to dust it with, that I will actually hit with a light dusting of green just to give it more of a green look, you know. Sometimes clients send me pictures of bluegill or brim or perch that they want me to mimic, and then I'll go by their picture reference. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stay with this same color. And right now, I'm probably spraying at around 26 PSI, which is a little high. If you're not really used to the gun or whatever, that means the paint's going to come out a little bit faster. So you may want to go a little bit lower. I usually stay anywhere from about 25 to 28 PSI when I'm airbrushing, unless I'm trying to do detail work, and then I'll drop down really low, you know, depending on whether I'm using stencils or whatever. There again, I'm just mixing up a little bit more and kind of thinning it, because I really want this to be thin for what I'm fixing to do. You know, I always tell people when you're airbrushing, especially like these small baits and stuff, man, you can use anything for patterns. I use sometimes, you know, lace material or tool material that I get from just one of the fabric stores. I'll go to their little scrap bin, and man, you can lay those over these baits and get cool patterns. If I want a scale pattern, a lot of times I'll use like different netting materials that I'll put over the top of them. So here, and there again, this is kind of a teaching thing. So a lot of times I'll go with like a low pressure, and I'll just put the little stripes of a perch. If you ever look really close, a lot of times a perch or a bluegill, they will have little faint stripes on them. So now I'm gonna cut the pressure of my gun down probably to about, from say around 26 to 28, probably to 10 PSI or lower. And I do that for like detail work. So basically what I'm gonna do to get these stripes, man, is I just went to the dollar store and picked up like a pick comb, and basically I just hold this to the bait, and I just lightly spray in between there, and I'll show you, man, to get your stripes, and they're pretty uniform. So you just kind of want to line them up where you want them. And then I don't know if you can see there, but I just like put some kind of vague striping on there. And I'll do the exact same thing to the other side. And again, when you do this, because it's more of a detail type thing, you want to drop the pressure to your brush pretty low. And there you go, man. That's an easy way to get stripes. And like I said, you can use combs, brushes, you know, anything you can to get a stripe. They don't have to be perfect. Most things in nature are not perfect. You're just trying to get a line. So because that was a darker color, I'm gonna rinse that out really quick. And again, that was detail sepia. I gotta turn the air back up to blow this out. That was the detail sepia, and man, I really use that a lot on crawl patterns and different things like that to bring that detail out. It's a really cool color, and you can see it's really like just a kind of a dark, rich brown, but because I put that pearl underneath it, it gives it almost a wet look when you don't put it on there too deep. But I probably would tell you that if you're going to paint baits, that you can get away with a lot of stuff just getting the basic colors and learn how to mix colors, and you can get, you know, what colors you want. But it's hard to get that detailed sepia, and in my opinion, that is definitely one of the have baits in my colors in my opinion. So I got a little wicked orange, and I'll use this for the belly. And again, I'm gonna probably cut my pressure down a little bit, just because I'm trying to get this very bottom, and I don't want too much overspray. Air pump again. There you go. And I'll probably just do like 1, 2, 3, 4 drops of this. And again, this is a wicked, but I still even like to thin my wicked colors because I just think they spray better. And I do go through a lot of toothpicks. So I put 4 drops of that, so I'm going to put 2 drops of reducer. And then I'll just mix it in the bowl. You want to make sure you mix it, really good. But you'll notice, you know, after I mix it, I have this paper here, and I'll always spray it a little bit just to see what's coming out of my gun before I put it on the bait. And that should be mixed up good enough. You can see kind of the orange on there, and then I'll rub it, basically smear it on this paper to see what I got. It looks pretty good. And then I'll slowly start putting this on the belly. So you can see now I've got that little bit of orange on the belly. I'm going to go ahead and heat set it or dry it. I see a couple places that I just need to touch it up, and that's part of the reason why that I do that little dry. Now I'll just leave that. So you can see now we're starting to look like a bluegill. And again, man, like on the older bluegills where you really see the more purple on it, you know, you don't have to use that much purple. Some people don't use any purple. Like I said, some people will use a green, but it's really all about shading. When you're doing these fish, really any kind of fish, man, you really don't want like just solid colors, because for the most part, you know, most fish are not just a solid color. It's almost like a lot of colors that are shaded on top of each other and blended on top of each other. And you know, I know some of you've seen some of my baits. Some baits I do just wild and crazy colors because that's what people want. But when I'm trying to do something natural, it's all about, you know, subtle blending of the colors. You don't really want any hard lines. Like I said, it doesn't have to really be perfect on any kind of detail or anything, because in nature most things are not perfect. And I know you'll hear me say that a lot, but I mean, how many people can say that, oh man, you know, you catch a fish and you look at it, and then the very next fish you catch and you say, oh man, that's identical. No, you're not going to catch two fish that are identical. It's about like people, unless they're identical twins or not. They might be similar, but they're not identical. So basically what I'm going to do after that, and even though you can kind of see by doing the blue and the purple that you still kind of got that almost whitish blue hue to the little gill plate under the bottom. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of Wicked Laguna Blue, and I'm going to keep this air set still pretty low. This I'm probably not going to thin because I'm only using just a very slight amount of it. And it's basically a Laguna Blue. It's almost like a light blue. I used to take just bright blue and mix white with it to get the color I wanted, but I found this color and it's pretty close. So this is why they call them a bluegill, man. You know, you got that little bit of blue that runs under the gill there on the gill plate. And I'm barely gonna put this on there. You don't want a crazy amount of it on there. I got my air set pretty low. And I'm basically just gonna mist this on there. And there you can see it's just a little bit of blue on there, just like your bluegill. And I'll clean this out real quick. And so basically, that is pretty much the whole pattern, basically then the other little bit of detail. And I'll show you that really quick. So basically, any lures that I do around these eyes, I like to take a little bit of black paint and I like to spray those eye holes. And you spray those eye holes black, and then the overspray goes around them just a little bit. So when you actually apply your glass eyes into there, or whatever eyes you're using, it shades it and it looks more realistic. You know, it makes it look like that the eyes belong there versus something just being stuck in there. You know, it's the little details doing this that kind of brings things out. So I'll show you real quick how we're going to do this. And basically, I have a bunch of stencils, man, that I keep for all kinds of different things. Some I've cut myself, some I've ordered. And this is basically a bluegill stencil that I ordered from Russ Allen, and insane custom details. Man, he's got all kinds of stencils, just about anything you want, and I'm sure that if he don't have it, he can make it for you. So just clean this out, make sure this is cleaned out pretty good, and I'm still pretty light on my air. So sometimes I'll do a detailed black magenta, but I think on this one I may just do a jet black. And you always want to make sure these paints are shaken up really well. I always keep paper towels in here, and I'll show you why in just a minute. A lot of times I'll even tape one down. And like I said, we're just about finished with this, so thanks for hanging on. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, I don't mind doing it. And I had somebody ask me about a bluegill pattern. I'm certainly not, you know, people like, oh, you showing people this stuff, you showing them your secrets. Trust me, there's really no secret to this. It's just a matter of, you know, practicing doing this, knowing your airbrush and that kind of stuff. And anybody that wants to sit down and try this, more power to you, because sometimes I promise you I make it look a little bit easier than it actually is. You notice I'm kind of calm, cool, and collected, but there was a time when I first started with this airbrush that I was not so calm, cool, and collective. I did a lot of cursing, and I probably wouldn't have made a video. And there was a lot of times I was like the Incredible Hulk in here. You know how Hulk says Hulk smash? I was Jim Smash, because I was like this stupid airbrush, but found out it wasn't stupid airbrush, it was stupid Jim. And then once I figured out how to use it, all right, so I got that thinned out pretty good. And like I said, right now I'm just trying to do the eye holes and not putting my glasses on to look goofy on here, so hopefully I can ring the eye hole. And so basically you can see that I've blackened that eye in, and what you probably, I don't know how good you can see it on there, but it's actually oversprayed to where it's black around a little bit around the eye hole. And basically, like I said, what that's going to do is that's going to make a nice shadow. Now, I caution this, if you're going to ever use a stencil, you want to make sure that everything on your bait's dry. So even though I've hit it and it's been a few minutes, I always go back with a blow dryer and just kind of make sure, because if not, man, once that stencil touches it, you're done. I mean, you scratched it, you knocked paint off. And thanks for sticking with me, man. This is the last little thing, and we'll be done with this paint job. All right, so this stencil, I have various fins, and typically, man, with these, unless it's a custom order, I don't even bother putting like the pectoral fins on there. I mean, I will sometimes if I'm doing a special bait, but these are more just like a production line. I'm usually have these lined up, and I'm doing 3 or 4 at a time. But the one thing they do have on these stencils, I don't know how well you can see them, but they have like these little black layers here. Maybe I can put this, there you go. And you can see that's for different like types of the what I call the ear fins on the sunfish. So you basically just have to find one that looks about as close to the size you need, and just kind of hold it up there. And I'm going to probably do a little bit of a bigger one here, and I'm going to still use the black. I really like to use gloves. I usually wear gloves all the time. I just didn't put them on because I didn't put my respirator on, because one thing about these lures, if you touch these lures, generally when I get these lures in, I scuff them, sand them a little bit, and then I wipe them down with alcohol. And what that does is it takes any oil off there. And if you get oil on these baits off of your hands just by touching them, even when they're painted, it's basically going to contaminate them, and you're going to put a clear coat on, and then anywhere you touch it, there's going to be a void from that clear coat. Don't ask me how I know that. I learned it the hard way. So heed that little tip. So basically you just line this up as best you can. And so basically what I'm going to do is, you'll see, I'm going to just line this little ear up to to where it goes on there, and you'll get a better understanding once I actually get this painted, and hopefully I can get it kind of halfway straight since I'm kind of in a hurry here. And so basically you can see there's your little ear tag. And I'm not going to do the other side. I think I've done enough video for y'all. That's long enough. I hope it was kind of interesting anyway. But the one thing I do want to show you is the reason why I have this paper towel is because if you're spraying this side of the lure, in order for you to put that same ear tag on the other side of the lure, you have to flip it over. So when you do that, after you've already sprayed this side, you're going to have paint on that. So what I like to do is I keep a paper towel, and then I basically just rub the paint off on the paper towel. Couple of things. One thing, that keeps the paint from building up on your stencil, so they'll last longer. But also, I mean, I've sprayed this side, not even thought about it, and put it on the other side with wet paint on it, and you know, messed your whole paint job up. So anyway, I'm gonna do the other side, and then after that, I usually I'll put the eyes in. I'll glue the eyes in with some super glue, and I've done that on some other videos. Not much to it other than putting a little speck of super glue and positioning your eye how you want it. And then after that, you know, I'll sign my name under it somewhere. And then basically you clear coat it, whichever clear you like to use. And I use a KBS, which I've done a video of that. But I think most of those are on the YouTube channel. But anyway, man, I hope it was interesting for you. And you can see there's your bluegill. Nothing spectacular, but I mean, it's close enough that it will catch fish. So hope you enjoyed it, man. Wash Hog Custom Baits, baby. Get you some.